Tonight, we looked at the past to understand the present and create the future. Come, find out, it's worth it. We are continuing. I'd like to dedicate this class for the complete healing of Vladimir, the son of Hannah. This class was dedicated in honor of his healing. I'd also like to mention the birthdays of two of my children. My daughter, whose birthday was today, Hannah Miriam Bas Cyril Rachel, and my son, whose birthday is tonight and tomorrow, Abraham Ben Cyril Rachel.
Wow, Mazel Tov.
They share the night. It's a cute story. When my daughter was, I believe, 9, well, it's very easy to see. That's how many years she is older than him. So it's when she was 9. It was her birthday. And it was at night. I was putting her to sleep. And she said, it was my birthday. I didn't give anyone a blessing. I'm like, well, you could bless me. I'm standing right here. So she said, okay, I give you a blessing. I give you a bracha. They should have a baby right away. Because I was quite pregnant then, but it wasn't supposed to be right away. And she had 2 brother-in-laws that were both single, Zev and Sachi. They should get married right now. Okay, beautiful. She goes to bed. And that night I go into labor and have her brother around. She said maybe she realized, I don't know if she really would have shared her birthday with someone else. She wasn't thinking, at that point. And one of her brother-in-laws did get engaged next week. So we did say, wow, the power of blessing, the power of a birthday. Very, very powerful day. And yes, they share the night as a result. So for Hannah Miriam Ben Cyril Rachel, for Avram Ben Cyril Rachel, should be a successful special year. So we are discussing the idea of how powerful we are and where we get our strength from. Why aren't we? Know we're powerful. I remember Chava telling me when she got a job and they were like, oh, good, a strong Jewish Russian woman coming. They couldn't wait. So we're strong. We know we're strong. We're powerful. We know we're powerful. Where do we get our strength from? That's what we've been discussing already. This is now the 3rd part of this series. And we're continuing today, going back to a very intense time for the Jewish people, the birth of our nation with the Exodus. And that is really when we see so clearly, though of course it happened before that in history, as we said, Abraham was told to listen to everything Sarah says, and Rivka saw the evil of Esau in a way that her husband Yitzchak, Isaac, did not. So of course we've seen this before, but here as a nation, because now is the first time we're really a nation, with the Exodus, and then of course with the giving of the Torah, 3,300 some years ago, we become the Jewish people. So then we really see the strength of the women. As the sages say, that in the merit of the righteous women, the entire Jewish people were redeemed. There were about 3 million people that were redeemed in the merit of the righteous women. So what was so special about these righteous women? So to look at what was so special about them, we look at their leader. And their leader was Miriam. Miriam was the older sister of Moses. She was 4 years his elder. There was Miriam, 2 years later was Aaron, and 2 years later was Moses. She wasn't just his older sister. She was really, in a sense, the reason for his birth. So boss the older sister to start off with, because before he was born, this was a very harsh time for the Jewish people. Actually, when we think of the Jews in Egypt, well, we really do see God's kindness here, because officially, we were supposed to suffer in Egypt for 400 years. But God in his kindness managed to shorten that 400 to 210. We were only in Egypt for 210, not 400 years. And instead, the time we were in the land of Canaan, but it wasn't really our land at that point, even though we knew it was going to be our land. But at that time, it wasn't our land, and we were foreigners, so to speak, within the land of Canaan. So those 190 years there, we also got to count. So from the 400, we got to knock off 190 when we were foreigners, so in our own land, so to speak, in the land of Canaan, and we had 210 years we had to pay off in Egypt. The 210 in Egypt were not slavery. The slavery did not start until the last of the sons of Jacob, the last of the sons of Yaakov had passed away. The last son to pass away was Levi. That's why his tribe stayed far more loyal than any of the others, because he was around the longest, he was able to impact them. And that's why they were different than the rest of the Jews. They didn't fall for the trick of slavery, and they were actually never enslaved. When he passed away, there were approximately 116 years left of the 210. So almost over 90 of those 210 years, we weren't slaves at all. And after he passed away, they started off, little by little. Of course, the shock was being slave, but then the last 86 years were horrific. Those were the harshest years of the slavery. And that was exactly the lifetime of Miriam. Miriam was born exactly when those last harshest 86 years began. As such, she saw such horrible things that the Jewish people were going through. And again, she personally, perhaps you could say, wasn't going through them. She was from the tribe of Levi. She did marry someone who was not from the tribe of Levi, but perhaps her husband was also, for different reasons, exempt. They were sort of a noble family, but she definitely saw what everyone was going through. And it was so painful for her. But it was more than that. It wasn't only because she saw what everyone else was going through and therefore she felt so bad. It was also because she had a prophecy. Now let's go back to, I said Miriam was really, in a sense, the reason why Moshe was born. Because her father saw what was going on. He was the leader of the Jewish people. And he's like, we can't have kids. We're going to have kids just for Pharaoh to kill them? We're not doing that. We're going to separate from our wives, and we won't bring any more babies into this world for Pharaoh to kill. And that's what happened. Moshe, Aaron's father, Amram, the leader of the Jews, separated from his wife Yocheved. And when they separated, everybody else separated, following them. They understood that was the right thing to do. No more marriages, no more babies, no more food for Paro's army to kill. No more fodder for the killing of babies, because we're not going to produce any more babies. And then Miriam has a prophecy. This little girl, probably about 3.5 at the time, 3+, has a prophecy. And she tells her father that she had this prophecy and that God told her that mom's going to have a baby and the baby's going to be the savior of the Jewish people. And Amram recognized the truth in his daughter's words, which is incredible to imagine this, at this point, quite old, elderly man, leader of the Jewish people, listening to a little girl 3+ and saying, okay, you're right. And he remarried Yocheved. And all the other Jews saw that, and they also got remarried. And they had a baby. And they had Moshe. And when he was born, everyone thought he was completely special. It says when he was born, the entire house filled with light. He was born already circumcised. He was born 2 months early. So everyone saw, whoever was in the know saw, yeah, this is the Redeemer. This is a special child. This isn't a regular child. He's born so early. The house is full of light. He's born circumcised. He's the Redeemer. And everyone was so happy. But then 2 months later, when he's 9 months old, that's when suddenly, Pharaoh's soldiers are starting to visit the house to find out if there's a baby. Because they saw when they got married and they were like, okay, we're going to give them, whatever it is, however many months, 10 months, 9 months, and we're going to start looking for a baby to kill. And knowing this was happening, as you probably all know the story, they took Moses and put him in a basket. What's a little baby going to do in a basket? Who knows? God, he's in your hand. We are doing our part. He's in your hands. And then Amram turned to his little daughter, who was about 4, tapped her on her head, and he said, my daughter, what's with your prophecy? I believed you. I listened to you. You were the voice of the prophet. We got married. We had a baby. And now we're throwing him down the river, so to speak. We're putting him in the Nile. What's with your prophecy? And she didn't have an answer. But she knew it wasn't prophecy. She knew her brother was a Redeemer, and she knows he's now in a basket in the Nile. And therefore, she went to the Nile. It says she just waited in the bushes, the reeds there, waiting to see what was going to happen to her brother, because she knew something had to happen, because she knew of the prophecy. And therefore, she was there when Paro's daughter came to bathe by the river. And she was there when Paro's daughter stretched out her hand and it got longer and longer and longer and pulled Moshe in. And she was there when he's crying and obviously he's hungry, but he won't nurse from any of the Egyptians. And she emerged and said, I know a Jewish midwife, a Jewish nursemaid. Like, great, this is obviously a Jewish child. He wants to nurse from a Jew. Call this Jewish nursemaid. So she called her mother, the baby's mother. And the baby got to be with his mother for however many months until he was weaned. And nobody could touch him. This is the princess's adopted son, and he's being nursed by this Jewish woman, and nobody could touch him. So here he is, the Redeemer, obviously a string of miracles, in his mother's arms, nursed by his mother. Everyone knows, and no one can touch him. So exciting things were happening. So that's cool. Like, oh, you have this prophecy, and oh my gosh, a baby is born 7 months later, and the house is full of light. And amazing. And then almost gone. No, great. Another miracle. Oh my gosh. All right. So you think there's going to be a soon happy ending, but there wasn't. And then he gets old enough. He goes to the palace. He grows up in the palace. He becomes a chief administrator for all of Pharaoh's affairs. He does some things to alleviate the plight of his brothers, but they're still slaves. And again, various different versions of how old he was, but sticking to one, when he was 40, he had to run away. And then he's gone for the next 40 years. And all this time, Miriam's like, what's with my prophecy? What's with my prophecy? What's going on? And when she felt this way, she knew it was true. She knew she had a prophecy. She knew her brother's the Redeemer, but she didn't see the redemption. And we drag through 40 years of him in Egypt, and we don't see redemption. And then for 40 years, he's gone. And this gave her great, great, great pain. So much pain that she became, in a sense, more in pain than anyone else of all the Jews, of all the 3 million Jews in Egypt. Because she knew it was supposed to be different. She knew the redemption was supposed to come. She knew her brother was the Redeemer. So when you know the redemption is here and you don't see it, and the Jews are suffering day after day after day, your pain is far more intense than if you just think, okay, this is the status quo until I don't know when, whenever. Let's not think about it. Just put one foot in front of the other and try to survive. She felt, she knew, and she was in enormous pain. And that is actually the reason for her name. Now, her parents named her, obviously, years before, but a name reflects the essence. And they named her with, obviously, the divine spirit, Miriam, because the root word of Miriam is mar, which means bitter. Miriam was very bitter. Not bitter in a way of like, I'm stuck and in pain and shut down, but bitter in the way of in a lot of pain. Because she believed so much, so her pain was so deep. But she was a leader. She was the head of all the Jewish women of Egypt. And as such, she imparted to the other women this message. Believe, redemption's coming. We're getting out. I even know who the Redeemer is. The Redeemer is my brother. You know, the long lost, vanished with the wind brother Moses. He's the Redeemer. He's coming back. He's redeeming us. And she gave the woman this message. And she gave the woman her belief. And she gave the woman her pain. Because if you really believe, you're going to be in pain. And because they absorbed her belief and her pain, and had so much belief in redemption, we're told in that merit the redemption came. And that's why our sages say the Redeemer is Miriam. So of course, people generally think the Redeemer is Moses. He was with the stick. He performed the 10 plagues. He was leading the troops, and I'm not knocking him at all. But the Redeemer was Miriam. The Redeemer was a woman, because she was the one that gave the Jews the merit to get out. Yes, Moses took them out, and he did amazing things. But they got out by virtue of the belief. And the belief was a belief of the women. And Miriam was the one who imparted to the women this belief. And what gave her such a strong belief? Her prophecy. And therefore, such belief. And therefore, such pain. So we really see here this relationship between the belief and the pain. Anyone here has been in a situation that they can connect to this idea of the more you believe something good's going to happen and it hasn't happened yet, the more it hurts you. So sometimes when we know something's supposed to happen and it's good and it hasn't happened yet, we hold on to our belief and therefore we're not so hurt. Like, let's say you're looking at your child and your child isn't where you want him or her to be, but you have a lot of belief and trust in God. Things are going to work out. He or she is going to turn out fine. Just give God his time and he will take care of it. So sometimes when you feel that way, you're in less pain. It doesn't hurt you because, okay, what they're going through now is very painful, except that I know that it's going to change. I know it's going to shift. I trust God. He's not going to let me down. This child's going to turn around. So sometimes that awareness makes your pain much less. But sometimes if you think this is wrong, this is an aberration, this isn't my child, this isn't how he or she should be, I know how he should be, I know how he will be. So what in the world is going on now? I don't accept this. This is not status quo. This is craziness. This is not him at all. This is not her at all. And therefore, what I see in the present, though I know it's not going to last, I know it's going to turn around, could hurt even more. Anyone? That resonates for anyone? So someone sent me a private message. Rivka, your wig looks so beautiful.
Thank you. Rachel asked me, I told her I have a new shadel, and she said to me, make sure you wear it to the class. So I'm wearing it.
So we all get to see it. Pretty and pink.
Thank you. Cyril, and we're trying to resist pain because we're trying to say what Hashem is sending to us when it seems not sweet, it's still good for us. You know, so we're trying to avoid pain and transform our pain into trust into Hashem, and understanding that we're not here yet, but that's the way it's supposed to be. It's good for us and it will change for the better. So yes, there is pain, but we're trying to replace it, to push it away and replace it with positive, with trust for Hashem.
And you're raising such an interesting question, because what you're saying is so true. Of course, that's what we're supposed to do. I don't know if anyone got a chance to see that little video I posted today on our group, but absolutely, yes, our belief, our reality is it's all God and we trust him. And that's why we know, for example, our child will be fine because we trust him and we know he's going to come through and we know it's going to be good as we understand the meaning of the word good. So in such a situation, Rivka's saying, there could be pain if I let myself, but I wouldn't let myself. I have more discipline than that. I have more belief in God than that. I have more trust than that. So Rivka didn't say it as a question, but it's sort of in my brain dings the question that I never thought of before. Thank you, Rivka. So how come Miriam didn't react that way?
Exactly.
I
was thinking just the same.
It's a very good question, Rivka. My gosh, I thought of these concepts so many times, and this one never occurred to me. How come Miriam doesn't have as much trust as Rivka? That's a very good question.
Is it has something to do with the name Miriam? Because
well, of course, Miriam is wondering about the name Miriam, and yes, of course, it has to do with the name Miriam.
I did not know what Miriam means, and now you said, and I'm thinking about every just said, and I'm putting on myself, thinking maybe I should change my name now.
Well, what you could do is add a name. I had a woman once in the class who, I don't think it was from what we learned in the class, but she decided that the name she had, I'm not going to say because obviously some people could remember who she was. I don't want to talk about someone else. But she decided that the name she had represented pain in a different way. Her name wasn't Miriam. And we discussed it and I looked into it Kabbalistically, and she actually had a point, which was very interesting. She sort of intuited a truth about her name. And I don't know if I suggested or she suggested, it was a number of years ago, but she added a name to
I'm gonna-
shift her mazel a bit.
I'm going to talk about this to you then.
So you could add a name, right? We
Yeah.
wouldn't take away a name, you could add, but yes, the name Miriam does mean a sensitivity to pain. So yes, her name is her essence. She had a sensitivity to pain. But Rivka's saying, come on, Miriam, step up to the plate. You have this prophecy. God's going to come through. Okay, Moses has vamoosed for the last 40 years. And 30 years before that, we were all slaves still. So what I'm thinking is a few things are coming to my head. I don't know if any of these are true, but they all work within the same concept of how we understand that original time in Egypt. So I'm assuming this is part of the truth. One point is to remember when we look back at Egypt, the Jews had not yet gotten the Torah. They were a totally different reality than we are. And I'll give you a very strong point to prove this. The Jews, as we said, were in Egypt for 210 years, of which they were enslaved for 116. That's tremendous kindness of God, as we said. It was supposed to be 400. It gets shrunk to 210. And from the 10, only 116 is slavery. And from the 116, they have 86 really horrible years. At the end of those 86 years, they are in the 49th level of impurity. So low, we're told, so impure, that if they were even there for like an extra minute in Egypt, they would have sunk into the 50th level and would never have gotten out because they would have been beyond saving, so to speak. And then God came and redeemed them and pulled them out. Now, let me ask you a question. They were in Egypt 210 years. Initially, Jacob is there. The tribes are there. The last of the tribes, Levi, passed away, and then they have 116 more years. So in 116 years, they fall to the depth of impurity. We have been in exile over 1,900 years. And it has been a really hard exile. And I can't think of anything that more proves the reality of God than our survival. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I welcome you to study Jewish history. Nothing in our history makes sense. It was actually interesting. Last night, Sunday night, I have a class with Noahide women, with non-Jewish women that serve God as Noahides. And I decided to have what I call Farbrengen. I prepared a series of questions and asked them to talk about themselves as Noahide, their journey. It was very, very fascinating. And I wasn't at all trying to go in this direction. Like, it wasn't on my radar at all. But somehow we got to this point that many of them echoed very strongly of the specialness of the Jews. And again, that came up in various ways in the conversation. And one woman said so passionately, like, they must, with the Jews, again, they are not Jews, they're saying the Jews must be a special people, because otherwise, how are they still here? How did they survive? I mean, she said this quite at length. I'm just saying it very briefly, but it was such a true point. And I said that's exactly part of the truth of the Jew, is that we're all the descendants of martyrs and miracles. We all know in our past we're martyrs, and we all know in our past we're miracles, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. And that's part of the proof of God in the existence of the Jews. But it's not only a physical existence, it's a spiritual existence. We're strong. We believe. We serve. So in Egypt, 116 years later, they almost didn't get out. They were so low. And we've been in exile over 1,900 years? And the answer is, this is not my original question. It's not my original answer. The answer is because we have the Torah. They studied Torah. They knew Torah, but they hadn't received it yet. They weren't the owners of the Torah yet. So they had a totally different spiritual strength than we do. That could be part of Rivka's non-question answer. For the same reason, though many of them did serve God, they served God as volunteers. They voluntarily chose to serve God because they hadn't gotten the Torah yet. They were not commanded. We serve God, and we're commanded. We keep kosher, we're commanded. We keep the Sabbath, we're commanded. And when you're commanded and do it, your action has far more power than if you're just saying it's a nice idea and I'd like to do it too. So every good deed we do, every commandment we do is such a force of power that they didn't have. Not because they were less than us. They probably were far greater. But they weren't given the Torah. They weren't given the commandments. And also, on a maybe more pragmatic level, but also true, we have what to look back on. We know what God done in the past. They were the past. They were the original exile. So there was no precedent for it to see what will be from what was. So our trust in God, and of course, it comes from a lot of work and attending this class and many others, but we also have the historical precedent. We also are the descendants, and actually it was us in a previous incarnation. We ate the manna in the desert for 40 years. And as we ate that manna, we were imbibing a belief in God. So I am not at all saying that it was any lack on their part, but it is possible that in certain ways we can trust because we already received the Torah, because we are commanded and do, because we know what happened in the past, because we've inherited the very strong muscle of belief in God. Our people has survived because of that muscle of belief in God. We've been living that way for 3,300 plus years. So if you feel like a newbie and don't know that much, but you're the product of generations of people that are still here because of belief in God. And as such, it's possible in a certain sense our muscles are stronger or definitely different. And maybe that's why we, in this situation where it's easy to fall into pain, but we don't. And we walk with trust instead of fall with pain. And maybe then, because of all of these differences, they totally believed, but trust is not belief. They believed, but they were in a lot of pain. But we're told the depth of pain was the depth of belief. It wasn't a pain that means shut down. I'm done. Forget it. Throw in the towel. No. It was, I believe so strongly, and that's why I'm in pain. I'm in pain because I believe. I'm in pain because I know it's not supposed to be like this. And I know it's not going to be like this. And that's why I can't accept the current reality. And in a sense, we have that now as well. Meaning when we think of now in the current reality where we're supposed to be in redemption. Baba Rebbe said this years ago. And when he spoke about redemption, he actually spoke about both feelings, about the trust and the joy, but he also spoke about pain. Not pain in a way of bitterness, but pain because of the horrors of exile. And maybe the difference, again, going back to Rivka's question, so why did he say pain? Why aren't we just trusting and happy and we know what's going to happen? Where's there room in our arsenal for pain? So maybe one answer is because we're thinking of other people's issues. For our own issues, we trust. For other people's issues, we turn to God and we say, what are you doing to your world? How can you let this happen to such good people? So we can have pain when we think of how other people are suffering. But there's also another aspect to it, which is the pain sort of means you're still in touch with reality. You know, you could be in this like la-la land of it's all great, it's all beautiful, it's all going to be wonderful, it's all great, it's all beautiful, it's all wonderful, which is good if you really feel it for real. But it could be that you're not really in touch with what's going on as you say all those words. Or it could be you are. When you're simultaneously feel the pain for what the world is suffering, and at the same time believe and trust and know redemption is coming, that's sort of the complete balance. That means like, yes, it's real. I know reality. I'm in touch with reality. and I trust and believe in God. Good things are happening. We're having the redemption now. I can have that joy. It's coming right now. So the pain is almost like the reflection, the underside of like, yes, this is real. It's real. And it's going to be redemption. Any thoughts, any questions on this relationship, how you see this relationship between, I'm sort of extending this concept based on what Rivka said, but this relationship of believing in redemption and therefore having pain that right now you don't see the redemption because you believe in redemption, therefore having this pain. Does anyone else see this relationship? How do you understand this relationship between the belief and the joy? And then the flip side of that same belief and joy is pain because of the current reality in our world and the suffering people are going through in our world.
I'm sure we all know what pain is, and we all feel or feel pain as we're in. From the classes we're taking with you, it's like I was thinking like we should use this pain as a fuel to do more to to bring the redemption, to use this pain as a catalyst to do more mitzvot and not just indulge. It's such a strange word to say, indulge in pain, but to try to make like this pain to push us to do
Exactly.
more.
You are 100% right. And that's exactly the point of it. Which I didn't even say, but I didn't have to, because Rivka said it. Yes. The purpose of the pain, besides being a check of your reality and the truth that, yes, you are aware of the world and completely aware and realistic, you know redemption's happening. It's the catalyst to do something. And I'm sure we've all experienced it. You don't have to learn this in the books. Definitely in my life, I can think of so many times when horrible things in the world just moved me to do more, We got to bring this redemption. And of course, if we were wired differently, just the belief in the redemption and the joy in the redemption will be such a push to do more. But being human, when we see pain and we see people suffering and we feel that pain, it's a very strong push to do more. So it definitely is part of that picture of the strengths of the women of bringing redemption. Chava, were you going to add something?
My point wasn't as brilliant as Rivka's.
Okay. All right. We're ready. Let's hear it.
No. Seriously, I really like the way Rivka put it. I was kind of leading that direction, but she just said it very clearly, brilliantly. So.
Okay, so you're like, Rivka, you just took all the words out of my mouth and you did a better job with them. So I am accepting your better job. All right. Anyone else? Anyone else has that's always the downside of someone saying something so well, someone else like, oh, what am I going to say now? No, please don't feel that way. The beauty of this class is hearing other people's voices. That's what I love about it. And seeing people's faces. Anyone else
Okay.
have something to add? Rachel.
Can you hear me? Because I
I hear
have
you.
earpiece. Yeah. How we say it? It's like I want to play the devil's advocate.
That's the English expression.
There is another side of all this. As time goes by, you may start being frustrated.
Absolutely. And the frustration is, I believe it, and I still don't see it. So what's going on?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that would then go back to, I would say, Miriam's greatness, because she lived this way for 82 years. In other words, let's compare it to our generation, where the Lubavitcher Rebbe came out in 1991 and 92. Obviously, it was a buildup already from about a decade before, but really clearly in 91 and 92 saying that this is it, Shia now. Like, absolutely, this is it. All right, it's been 30 years. She lived that way for 82 years. 82 years. And maybe that pain, bitterness, belief are all actually a testimony that she never fell into being frustrated. Because I think when you'd be frustrated, you would stop feeling. I would think, and maybe not, but I would think like if a person was really strong and that's it, and it's happening and it doesn't happen. And then you wait maybe a week, or maybe you wait a year, or maybe wait a decade. It doesn't happen. You could just be like, oh, whatever. Maybe it wasn't a prophecy, you know, maybe I don't know, had a weird dream that night. And you just give up on it. And you just try to survive. Try to protect your children. Try to protect the people that you're closest to. Cry a lot, worry, when is this, you know, God, what are you doing? But to maintain belief, and we're saying belief and pain are sort of interwoven here, means you're still believing. And she still believed for 82 years. And she believed so much that she inspired everyone else to believe. Because to believe enough to inspire someone else to believe, you have to really believe. So we're like sort of sparked by your belief that we also can believe. So you're right. That is pretty amazing. Now, you could, again, contrast it to us now and say, well, that's what we've been through, crossing all intergenerationally. We're still holding on. It's 1900 years later. And as a people, we believe in redemption. We believe there'll be a third temple. It's the 12th and 13th of our beliefs. You know, it's axiomatic to the Jewish belief is there'll be redemption, there'll be a temple, there'll be the resurrection of the dead. And it's been 1900 years and we haven't given up on God yet. But because the slavery was so intense, it was a much higher level of challenge than here. Meaning, if you live today as a Jew, as a committed Jew, really believing in your relationship with God, really trying to serve God to the best of your ability, which is all God asks for, you know in the back of your head that there's going to be redemption. And you might even know in the back of your head that this world is not as it should be. And every once in a while, something really bad happens and reminds you. But still, throughout your day, be busy with a lot of other things. Good things, godly things, reality, life things. You could be busy doing your laundry and cleaning and shopping and managing your bills and earning fewer dollars to manage your bills. You could be busy with learning Torah and saying Psalms and going to classes and making sure your food is kosher and your dress is modest. You could be busy serving God. And you could be busy with relationships and with spouse and with parents and with children and with neighbors and busy with work. So we can be so productively busy with good things, with permissible things, with godly things. In the back of our reality is an awareness that this isn't the way the world is supposed to be, that there's supposed to be redemption, and there will be redemption. But it doesn't have to really affect your day-to-day life. Because we could be busy, we could be happy, we could be fulfilled, we could be productive, we could be achieving. There's this little gray cloud somewhere that we're all in exile. But it might not bother my day-to-day workings, except every once in a while something really bad happens, and then I remember it. And then I move on. By Miriam, by her generation, no such luxury, no such option. The reality of their life was horrific, was abnormal cruelty, were people trying to hurt them, trying to devise new ways to break them every single day. So there wasn't any comfort zone of, yeah, redemption's coming and whatever comes, it's cool, and I believe it's coming now, but I don't have to let it impinge on my reality. Their reality was horrific enslavement, horrible enslavement, not an enslavement just to see how much labor we can get out of you, an enslavement designed to hurt you, to harm you on every level. So they didn't have that luxury. It was either believe or just forget about it, because it's never going to happen. There wasn't any space in the middle of like, I believe, but it doesn't have to really affect me so much. So maybe I'm wondering why it's taking so long, but whatever, it's okay. Life is okay. Life is even good sometimes. Life is even good sometimes. No, by them it was just constant, horrific torture. And therefore, you really believed, or as Rachel's saying, you really gave up on it. Because believing hurts. And that's sort of the point I'm trying to bring out. Believing came with a price tag. Like all good things in our life, every good thing we've ever gone through, it's always come with a price tag. Every gain comes with a loss. I'm sure we all know that. So believing came with a price tag. And the price tag was the awareness of the pain. If you don't believe, you numb yourself out. If you believe, you're not numb. You're very, very, very cognizant of what's going on. And therefore, it really hurts. Miriam, again, as this child, so believing, and 82 years later, still so believing, and infusing all the women, she emerged as the leader of the women. Now, again, that's not so unusual. As I said, her father was the leader of the Jewish people. Her mother, in a sense, was the leader of the women before her. So it was a very natural position for her to be the leader. But she really was. It wasn't Aharon's wife, even though, of course, she was also a wonderful woman. It was Miriam. I say Aharon's wife because after Amram passed away, Aharon was the leader of the Jews. Aharon was the leader of the Jews. Moses is still, and we know, Never Land. We don't know where he is. Amram passed away. Who's the leader of the Jews? Amram's son, Aharon. So he was the leader, but the leader of the woman was Miriam. And she really, really, really did her job so well, with all the pain and with all the belief, that we got out. We got out on the merit of the belief. Whose belief? The women's belief. Who helped them believe? Miriam. Why are we here today? We're that same generation. We're that generation of believers. We're those women. We believed then, and God brought us back because we need to bring redemption. They need our belief. They need our focus, not losing focus, not giving up hope, not letting God off the hook, believing now. And that's why we're told that when everything climaxed, and the final climax of the destruction of Egypt was by the sea. Right? As we all know the story, they left Egypt a week before. The Egyptians start chasing them. What? We gave up all our slaves and all that great stuff. We want it all back. What were we thinking? Sort of amnesia over the past 9 months and the 10 plagues. And they chase after us, and they're behind us, and the sea's in front of us. And we walk through, and the sea splits, and the Egyptians pursue us. And the sea covers them over, and they drown and die in a horrific way for all their evil. And we emerge, and we see that they're all dead, and we burst into song. And the men say, "Let's sing." And the men have about 19 verses of song, and the women have 2. And we're told that the woman's song was far more precious than the men's. The question is why? It wasn't longer, that's for sure. And says, well, when the women sang, they also danced. The men didn't dance. When the women sang, they also had musical instruments. They had tambourines, maybe other drums. Our song was more special than the men's. So, all right. So we had some tambourines in our back pockets. We had some drums. We knew how to dance. I mean, come on. Why does that make it so much better than the men? I mean, of course, it's nice that it was a woman's song. That's better. But let's be fair. So what? Why did that make it so much better? The reason why we danced, and therefore the reason the dancing was so precious, and the reason why we played the musical instruments, and the reason therefore why the musical instruments were so precious, is because the dancing and the instruments expressed our joy was far more intense than theirs. The intensity of the joy by the women was so great, we burst into dancing. The intensity of the joy was so great, we had to play those instruments as well. We needed another expression of our joy in the enormous redemption God just did in front of our eyes. So why were we more happy? I mean, we all were at the brink of death. Some of the Jews said, let's suicide. Some of the Jews said, let's give in. Some of the Jews said, let's fight. We'll die, but we'll take some of them down with us. We all universally experience the enormous redemption by the sea, that the more you invest in something, the more you have joy in it. I was just reminiscing with my daughter yesterday, whose birthday is today, that I remember by her bat mitzvah, I worked really hard. It was my first child having a celebration. She's my oldest. And I remember working really hard for bat mitzvah. And I remember feeling such joy by the celebration. And I said, I was so happy because I worked so hard. And that's true. The more we invest in something, the more joy we feel. So the women had invested in this product called redemption. The women had believed in a way of depth the men did not have, had pain to a degree they did not have. And therefore, the joy when it comes to fruition, when the prophecy of 80 years before is finally completely fulfilled, no, our joy was totally different. And that's why we danced, and they didn't think of it. And that's also why we played instruments. But the instruments also had another dimension to them. You could wonder, how did they have instruments in their backpack in the desert? Or if we did, why didn't the men? And the answer is the same. Because the women were so confident in God's imminent destruction of Egypt. Yeah, we got out, but Egypt is still powerful. No, this can't be the end of the story. We don't know the exact script, but we know we're going to see the destruction of the Egyptians one way or another. And as such, as we're packing our knapsacks, we're putting in musical instruments because we know we're going to have a reason to celebrate. So the instruments were so precious to God, both because they expressed their greater joy and because they were proof of their belief, because that's why they brought instruments to the desert. And that's why in the Haftarah portion of the Torah portion that discusses this, the Haftarah as we say it, is a song of a woman. It's a prophetess, Devorah, and the song she sings praising God. And it's interesting because obviously it's to reflect the Torah portion. And the Torah portion is the Jews praising God. But again, the men are singing for 19 verses, the women for 2. So why did the sages pick a woman's song as the Haftarah? Why not a man's? We have another Haftarah, the Song of David. No. Even though the women have 2 verses and the men have 19, no. Those 2 verses, that's the punchline of the story. That's the most significant portion. And we're highlighting that Haftarah is a woman's song. And that's really our song and our story. And now we're looking at ourselves, because all of this, of course, is for us to reflect on our own journey. We really see in here belief, trust, pain, joy, doing something about it, not just waiting till this is over, not just saying, God, I'll leave you to handle your world, but really moving with joy, with trust, with pain, with belief, and that creating the reality. That fact, I don't know how many tambourines and drums they had. I didn't know if every woman put hers in her knapsack, in her suitcase, in her pack. I don't know if it was 1 or 2 or 3. But it was so significant to God. You trust me this way that you're already prepared, that you're taking musical instruments with you to the desert because you know you're going to want to sing praises to God. You know the good that's going to happen. That action was the catalyst for what happened. We could take this into our own story, into our own life. We all have things, personal redemptions. We have the redemption of the whole world. That's on our shoulders. And we have personal redemptions. Maybe redemptions in terms of relationships, redemptions in terms of children, redemptions in terms of health issues, redemption in terms of financial issues. We all have our list. We all have the redemptions we're looking for. We're seeing here how to create redemption. And we're being told who are the creators of redemption. It's us. It's literally us. Because according to the Arizal, the second greatest Kabbalist of all times, We are those women. We were all in Egypt. You might not remember. We were all there and we did it. And that's why God brought us back to do it again. So both in terms of cosmically and in terms of personally, our own personal redemption, these are the tools. We have them in our hands. And when we look and tackle what comes first to your mind when I say redemption in your own life, your first thought of what you want to be redeemed from, but you know you need redemption for. And like me, you might have a long list. But what's really important to you, pull on your strength. You are that woman. You are that strong. So think, I am? Me? Oh, maybe. No, you are. So what does that mean I'm strong? What that means is step up to the plate of believing in God. One, I'm just going to take an example. Let's say we mentioned before, let's say you have a child who's not in a good space. Or, you could fill in the blanks with anything else. Let's say there's a health issue. Let's say there's a financial issue. Let's say there's an issue inside yourself. Some inner healing that you're waiting to be redeemed from. One, belief. It's gonna change. This will have redemption. How do I do that so confidently? Because I trust God. Because I know I'm his child. Every one of us is God's only child. He's all powerful. I'm his kid. Would you not do this for your child if you could? So we expect any less of God? Of course it's going to happen. Any good thing? Of course it's going to happen. So confronting, not being scared, looking at that issue and saying, yes, this will change. This is not forever. This will change. I know, I believe. I trust God absolutely. How? I don't need to know the details. Anything I think of, he's probably not going to do anyway. But it will change. This issue too will have redemption. That was a big piece, right? Their belief, their confidence. And as Rivka said, trust. We're definitely a time when we're supposed to trust, and trust creates Mashiach, trust creates redemption. So absolute trust, this is going to be the good I want to see. At the same time, being aware of the pain of the current situation. And that awareness as an expression of your belief that it's not going to be like this. It's going to change. And at the same time, already feeling the joy in the good that you're going to experience. Like getting into that space of, oh my gosh, is this going to be some amazing story that I will or won't share with other people? This is going to be so amazing. I don't know how God's going to do it, but the miracles, wow, I could taste them. I know how good they're going to be. And that's why actually what we're supposed to do when we're in a situation that needs a healing, a redemption, is we're supposed to celebrate before we even experience it. And that celebration, before we even experience it, is a great merit for it to happen. How did they do this? Well, they did this by bringing out those drums and tambourines. They brought out those musical instruments because they knew the redemption was happening. Well, it already happened. They left Egypt. No, they knew we're not done. There's still all those evil Egyptians around. God's not done. We know something else is going to happen. So their belief was so strong, they were prepared to celebrate. Our belief in our redemption has to also be strong, which means, in a sense, before it happens, we have to celebrate. Before it happens, we have to already be thanking God for the miracles we know he's doing for us. We have to already be focused, already be joyous, already be so full of this sense of, thank you, God, for what's going to unfold. I'm so excited. I know it's going to be so good. And that is really the belief, the trust, the joy that makes it happen. I don't know if any of you have ever tried this. Thanking God before the miracle that's going to be. And you're very thanking God creates it. But that's in essence what we're saying here. The belief, the trust, the joy, putting the tambourines in your knapsack is what's creating, what's allowing God to create that redemption. And that's really in our hands, in our ability. So if you could think in your head, think of something, one something. And for that one issue, try to use this muscle of, I know it's going to change. I believe it's going to change. And I already am excited. I already am feeling the energy of, wow, the miracle that's going to unfold in this direction. And every time you revisit that issue, and obviously it's a significant issue because that's why you're choosing this one over anything else. Every time you revisit it, try to stay in that space, in that confident, joyous space, that joyous space of, it's gonna be so good. It's gonna be so good, I could already taste it. It's gonna be so good, I could already envision it. And feeling that way creates redemption. Any thoughts on this idea? Any personal applications? Anyone has tried this or can envision trying it or would like to shift into this?
Yes, I want to say a few words. So there are certain things I'm praying. It's about my children. And like every day I'm going to say, what's going on, Hashem? How long? Bezvonet. I would say a few words in Yiddish. I feel like I have more like an intimacy when I talk to God in these words. And it doesn't work anyway. Nothing worked now. And today I was listening to your video before class started. And I'm thinking how it was good to hear this today when I was like in doubts. Like some days you have better days, some days you have worse, and trust and emuna in beliefs. Sometimes it's like ups and downs, right? And this video tells me like that's how it's supposed to be right now. Just accept what's going on now. It's going to happen. But after today's class, what you taught, it's almost like opens up for another breath. Like, so you're in the right path just now. And I actually wrote to myself, like on a little piece of paper, I wrote, just trust in God, change will come, and it's going to be amazing. Thank you, God. And I'm going to put the sticker on my desk. And just when I will feel a little doubts, I'm going to read this little sticker. Sometimes it's very hard when, like you said about Miriam, how did she have this power to believe? At the same time, she had this bitterness of what's going on for so many years. It's very easy to understand her. From my own experience, when you walking and still hitting the wall, and it's not you that you can change. It's something other your child does, right? Or something that you are out of you. Its only power is just talking to God. So you feel powerless. And here I'm gonna. Well, I always concentrating on a positive outcome, but as I said, someday that goes down, and I needed this class today for fresh air, just to give me another hope and just open up this, I would say, vessel to bring something new and good things to happen.
So maybe God made the class for you.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe it is. I needed this today.
I'm glad you got it. We all have different days when we desperately need to hear it. And I love your idea of the sticker. I definitely write notes to myself on my papers. I have to remember to read the notes, but I definitely every day I write on the paper different notes of what I want to remember, because in our mind, we know so much good stuff, but from the mind to the heart, sometimes things get lost in translation. And we want to not just know it, but we want to feel it. And when we feel it, we have that calm and we have that joy and we have that anticipation. Because it's going to, as great as the pain, that's going to be the greatness of the joy. That's what I was trying to express. Because the women experienced that pain in a way the men didn't, and they experienced their belief in a way the men didn't, they experienced joy in a way the men didn't. So for each one of us in all of those areas of our pain, of our dark spaces, the turnaround, the depth of the pain is the intensity of the joy, the intensity of the liberation that we are all going to experience, each one of us in our own personal areas, and our trust and our belief and our confidence and our tambourines in our hands, whatever that means for each one of us. That's helping God, allowing God to do what, of course, he wants to do. We're his child. It's not like he lacks the resources. It's not like it's out of his, pay level. It's not like something he doesn't know how to do. He is completely capable, and he completely loves us. And he completely knows what's going on. So he knows it all. He has absolute love for us. He's completely capable. So why does life look sometimes the way it does? For us to produce what he's waiting for us to produce for our own benefit, for what we need to do. And when we achieve what we're supposed to achieve, it's a mutual joy, ours and God's, when the blessings, when the redemption can flow.